All right, so we moved the profile web service logic that retrieves a particular user. We moved it from the client side to the server side, right? So let's keep moving a couple more things. For instance, being able to register, being able to log in. Okay, so let's do that. Let's log out. Right now, the login that works, right? But the search for whether the username and password match, that's still going out to the client, right? The hard-coded data that is in the client. Instead, we want to modify that to go out to the server instead. All right, so let's do that. So let's go to the controller that does that. Let's see if we go to the login controller. Here's a view that has the username and password input fields, and we have the controller that handles the login function right here. And right now it's looking for the user using a local find user by credentials that is using the hard-coded values in the client. Right, it's this one right here, right? It's right here that's iterating over the local array of usernames and passwords. All right, so let's move this logic over to the server. So what we want to do here is that instead of using this code, right, we want to do something similar that we did for the find user by ID. We want to generate a URL. Right, the URL is going to be something like very similar to what we had earlier. Right, but we don't have an ID, right, because this we don't know what their ID is, right? The only thing that we have is a username and password. Now the homework suggests that we use a query to pass username and passwords. Typically, you wouldn't do that since you don't want to pass passwords as part of the URL, especially being in the clear, right? But nevertheless, let's play around with this. So we're going to pass the username, right? Username as an argument, and then use ampersand password equal and then the password. So that's the URL. I'm sorry? A username. Ooh, thank you. Yes, very good. Yep. So what we want to do is generate an HTTP GET, right, and pass in the URL and see what comes back. All right, let's see what comes back. So that's going to hit the server. Let's see what happens here, right? If we restart and we go back here and now do Bob and Bob, right? And this still works. Why is it still working? So let me refresh. Probably it's caching the JavaScript from before. Let's try that. Bob, Bob. Okay, there it is. It fails. Okay. What's happening here is that notice that user is going out to the server, and indeed we have a URL that is going all the way to user, right? We're listening to it, but notice that it's ignoring the username Bob and password. Okay, and it's returning all the users, right? It's hitting this server over here, right? This server on the server. Where are you? Services. This one, right? It's hitting this one right here. This find all users because it's mapped to this URL right here. See that? It's ignoring the query parameters. And so perhaps what we could do is put the query parameter and say, okay, I want to match it against this URL. Yes? Right? Unfortunately, that's not how we map it. Right? Basically, the query string is entirely ignored, but it is parsed. Right? Express does parse the query string, and it provides it to you as an argument that you can use it to see what came from the browser. Okay, so that's what we're going to have to do here, right? We're going from the find all users. We're going to have to parse those query parameters and behave differently depending on what those queries are. Make sense? Right? So to retrieve them, we can retrieve the username from the request from the query. query, and then username. Okay, query is a map, right, that is created by Express when it parses the query string. It parses the query string and creates a name value pairs. Right, we can then retrieve it here. You can use the square brackets or the dot notation, whichever you prefer. Right, same thing with the password. We can say password request that query, and here I will use the dot notation password. Password. All right, you can use them interchangeably in JavaScript. Okay, everybody okay? All right. Now, if we don't have either one of them, right, then this should behave the same way it was behaving already. Right? If you're not giving me a username, you're not giving me a password, then indeed you want all of them. Okay. So we might say if username and you have password, then we would handle something, yes. Else, we just return the users. Okay? Everybody okay? All right. So in this way, we can distinguish one or the other. Okay? All right. So if we do have a username and password, we have both, right? What we need to do is basically use the same logic that we had in the client, right? When we were looking for a username and password. Username and password, where is it? By credentials, this one, right? This logic right here. Let's copy that. Let's come back here, and let's uncomment this. And the logic is iterate over all the users, the array that we have, the users array. If you find it, there it is. Check to see if the username and password match whatever came, right? And return. We're not going to return. Instead, we're going to send it back as a response to the server. Right? We're going to say response.sendBackUser. Now, notice that I've been using send in several places. Send, yes? Over here I'm using send. Now, send is a very powerful function. It's a smart function. It knows what to do, the right thing to do, depending on the data type that I'm using. Send can send back a whole bunch of things. It can send strings, numbers, files, a whole bunch of different things, different MIME types. Okay. Here it knows that this is a JSON object, so it sends JSON object. And depending on the MIME type, it sends the correct MIME type header. Okay. But if you know that the data is actually JSON, right? You can make the life easier and just use .json. Okay, this explicitly just passes along the application /JSON MIME type, right? It encodes it in JSON format. Okay, so there it is. So wherever possible, use JSON if you know it's JSON. Okay. All right. So and we're done, right? Here we're not going to continue, right? If we did not find the username and password, again, we're going to respond send status 404, and we're going to return. Okay? Everybody good? All right. So if we restart and come back to this, and we reload this and try Bob and Bob and do a login, let's see what we get. We get the user. There it is, Bob. All right, so we were able to retrieve it. And the headers, we did pass in the username and password. And here are the value. What we just need to do is to tie, right, what the service is receiving from the server, tie it to the controller. Right? So we're going to do the same thing as before. Right? Here is the controller. Right? And the controller. Well, not the controller, sorry, the service, the user service, right? So we don't need that anymore. What we're going to do is do basically the same exact thing we did before. We're going to unwrap it and return it in a nested promise. Right, so we're going to then function response and return response.data. Yes? Now in the controller, we also need to be ready to receive that promise. Okay, so let's go back to the controller. controller. There it is. So we're not going to use this anymore, right? Because this is a synchronous call. This has become now an asynchronous call. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to comment it out. And instead, this is going to receive a promise, right? This is going to become then, right? And this is, and the logic that we used to have here is now in here. See that? Okay? It will execute when we actually have found something, and this will be found here. Found. If it's different than null, it'll navigate to the user. Otherwise, it'll say the user was not found. Okay. So if we refresh and we go to Bob, indeed we navigate to the profile like we did before. Make sense? Everybody with me? All right, great. So now let's play around with registration, right? Being able to create a new user or find an existing user if it's already taken. So let's take a look at that.